Good evening, traders. Tonight we have John Carter, David Starr, and Henry Gambell introducing the all-new micro Voodoo lines and showing you how to find precise trades in this sloppy market. Before we dive in, let's go ahead and take care of some housekeeping. Throughout the webinar, you may notice interactive features such as polls and offers popping up on your screen. We also have a chat panel on the left where you can chat with the audience, as well as a Q&A panel on the right where you can ask questions that will be answered by our expert moderator team, as well as John, David, and Henry at the end of the presentation. To help you get the most out of tonight's presentation, we've also added some handy features to optimize your viewing experience. You can minimize the chat section with just a click and maximize the video by hovering over it and clicking Enter Full Screen. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn all about the micro Voodoo lines. John, David, and Henry, the stage is all yours.
All right. Awesome. Awesome, Daryl. Thank you so much. Feels like we've been, it's like serenading the intro there for a long time, years and years and years. And it's always kind of a nice calming thing to listen to Daryl's voice and get ready to present some cool information. So welcome, everyone. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for joining us. I also like to see too, we did this a couple weeks ago. Curious if anyone here was on that one, or if this is the first time that you've been doing that. And then also I always like to see, if you can answer, I don't know, just type in first time or second time. Maybe that's the easiest way to do that. And then also just kind of where you're from. I always like to see kind of where everybody's logging in from. Sometimes there'll be somebody that lives 5 minutes down the road from me, and other times on the exact opposite side of the world, which is one of the really amazing things I think about trading is that, no matter where kind of we live or grew up, or, what we've been raised under, what country or political party or religious dogma, all of us have been exposed to, trading kind of like cuts to the chase. Trading hits those core elements of, like freedom, choice. You're in control of your own fate. And I think that cuts through, all that stuff, which I always think is great. So I always like to see where everybody's from as well too, which is great. Cool. Okay. And so we do have a lot of people here that this is the first time that you've seen this. And then also some folks too that this is the second time, which is great. Puerto Rico, nice. Hope you're taking advantage of the taxes there. Houston, Texas. Got Toms River, New Jersey. I always like the Hamilton musical. If you guys have seen that, like everything's legal in New Jersey. Yuma, nice. Very cool. Okay. Well, very nice. It's again, thank you for joining us tonight. So our goal tonight is really just, if you've seen this before, it's just to kind of reinforce some of the reasons why we're finding this particularly helpful, especially in this market. But honestly, they're going to be useful whatever. These tools kind of build on each other. So even if we one day go back to a rising bull market, right, these will still be invaluable even for intraday trading. And I noticed too last time we did this that a lot of times, we kind of jumped right into this whole concept of voodoo lines. And so for folks that have never seen that before, they're like, well, what are voodoo lines? Like, so, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. And then the three of us will kind of go through each of the ways that we're also utilizing these, and just kind of take a look and sit back. And I always say on stuff like this, the idea is to educate, and hopefully it's fun too, but just kind of sit back and just kind of, if there's any aha moments that come up, like, oh yeah, geez, that would make my life so much easier, or you know what, I got this, I don't need anything like that. And so I always recommend just kind of seeing that usually, and at the very least coming out with a couple of ideas that can, improve your own trading journey along the way, which is always important, right? All right, so let's dive into this. I'm just going to turn off my camera so we can kind of see the slides a little bit better, and we'll just kind of dive in here. Okay, so what's going on in the current market? In a word, uncertainty. The Fed doesn't even know what's going on. Right now, I saw today that there are 43, count them, 43 markers out there, PMI, all that kind of stuff, that have all shown that inflation has topped and is rolling over. But the Fed's still like, yeah, we may need to raise rates a little bit more. So the market's super, super uncertain about all of this. And one of the things we want to keep in mind here is that we have had a very, very much a wide trading range since June of 2022. Now, granted, it's like a 600-point trading range on the S&Ps, and it's recently gotten narrower and narrower and narrower, but it is a trading range. And trading ranges are fun if you can trade them right, and they're absolutely devastating and mind crushing if you trade them incorrectly, like if you assume that it's a trend, right? Now, the Fed has been obviously extremely hawkish in fighting inflation, and now they're starting to talk a little bit about easing back, but not quite yet. There's a lot of pressures happening out there. Some banks are failing. Credit for commercial real estate is in the toilet. Uh, Credit for small business loans is basically frozen. And all this stuff has impact. And so the idea that we could easily be in a recession by the end of this year is certainly front and center. And the idea that they're going to have to start cutting rates again, and we're just going to do this whole thing all over again. So, but with all this, with all the bad news, the markets aren't crashing. And I think that's the biggest thing that's surprising most people out there. The idea just that, why aren't we crashing? Because a lot of people are excited about the idea that, man, if I get really short and the market crashes, I can make a lot of money. Look, the crash already happened is basically the answer to that. But so we're in a range, right? So just a lot of mixed messages. And the question is, what's going to happen next? And we're in an area where nobody knows what's going to happen next. So this leads to violent back and forth. We've seen this before, parts of 2015, parts of 2018. And this can be frustrating if you're not prepared for it. And what happens in this is that what I would just call normal targets to the upside and the downside just don't quite get hit. The market kind of reverses before it gets there, and it causes a lot of frustration and kind of confusion as well. So if you've been frustrated by these markets, now you know why. And I've been a little frustrated myself at times. I like to ride a horse up into a target to the upside or the downside. And in these markets, you just got to be a little quicker to do that, a little quicker to take those chips off the table. So what's happening is this is making narrower tradable levels the key to navigating this minefield, and we just don't want to know what they are. So why do levels matter so much? Okay, and there's different kinds of levels that we all love and we all use. Okay, Fibonacci levels, I'm a big fan, especially that 1272 extension. Quant pivots, this is something that we introduced last year that talks about kind of where AI kind of looks for places to fade the market. They're super helpful. Floor trader pivots, back in the day, I use these all the time for day trading the S&Ps. And then there's the Voodoo lines. All right, and so I think everybody generally knows what the fibs are. You may not know what the quant pivots are, but generally everybody is familiar with Fibonacci levels and Fibonacci and floor trader pivots. And the biggest thing to understand here is that these change all the time. So every day the floor trader pivots are new. Okay, the Fibonacci levels will change as the range changes. So these aren't levels where you can plan in advance. Okay, and that's something that I think is a big downfall of that. Now, if we look at this chart, this is a weekly chart. Okay, this is a big weekly chart of the SPX recent price action. And I learned about something called the major Voodoo lines a little over 10 years ago. And they changed my trading drastically. And the inventor of these, David Starr, and he'd emailed me for a couple of months, and we'd go back and forth. And at this time, I was getting a lot of emails with people that had these tools. And most of the time when I dig into them, they were like, okay, that's not that interesting. But when David showed me them, my jaw literally dropped because I just didn't understand why they worked. And he explained it to me. And there's, no big, not something I want to spend half an hour explaining right now. But the bottom line is, not only did they work, but they stayed there all the time. Like, they didn't change from day to day. They don't change from week to week. In fact, the key levels have been there for decades in some markets. Okay, and that means that we can plan in advance for those levels. So prior to the major Voodoo lines, I was never quite sure when a market was setting up to stop and turn. And sure, I could throw up some fibs and pivots, but these change as the market changes. Now look at this. Look where it topped out here. Look where it bottomed out here. Now, boom. All right, so here's the major Voodoo lines on a weekly chart. Now, when I say weekly chart, major Voodoo lines, sometimes it's like, well, what happens if I look at a 5-minute chart? Well, if you look at a 5-minute chart, the lines don't change. 4083 is going to be there no matter if you're looking at a 5-minute chart, a 30-minute chart, a daily chart. It's just that on a weekly, you can kind of see the range of them, right? So this tree line was here well in advance when we came up and just kind of gave it a kiss. And when I look at this is that the fire line is the major level, the tree line is the second major level, and then you have these snow lines that are the third levels. And there's also what's called a sky line, which is more for daily charts. But you can see that we stop exactly here. We stop exactly here. We stop exactly here. We come down to the fire line. We come down to the tree line, and just again, these don't change, right? And this is, where are we today? We are right here at the fire line. We're just holding at that level. Now, do these work with stocks? Yes. Here's a weekly chart of Microsoft. Where did it stop? Right at the fire line. It came all the way back down to another fire line, right? And you can see that it stopped here at the tree line. And again, it just kind of gives us nice tools to be able to plan in advance. Recently, like last week or 10 days ago, I did a trade in NOW now, and we were down here at the tree line, and I'd watched that we'd bounced and we were forming a squeeze, and I put a target at 465. And a lot of people were asking, well, why 465? Well, it's because that's where the fire line is. And boom, we raced right up to there, and it turned out that we hit our target like 2 or 3 days. The stock rallied like 30 points over 2 days. So these are the things that I can look at and just plan. And we can see here, gosh, that snow line just stopped it dead every time, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I just, to me is helpful. Okay. So, but there is a problem with these levels. There's a big problem with these levels if you like to day trade. Why? Because they're wide. So here's, I was telling earlier, here's the 5-minute chart, and here's the major Voodoo lines where we are right now. So here's 40.19, here's 39.80. Okay, that's 40 points. All right. And then here's the snow line at 39.16. That's like 60 points. So as a day trader, you can spend all day kind of going in between these levels. And yeah, don't get me wrong, if we get up to a major level, that's an action item. But what about this is like an entire day where we don't get near one of those levels, right? So now it's like, geez, I would love to be able to have some levels that could handle the in between. If you guys are fans of that movie on Netflix, oh my God, my mind went blank. It's Stranger Things, but there's this whole thing, the upside down. It's the whole world beneath the world, and that's what this is. This is reality, and in the void here is kind of the upside down. What's happening there? What can we learn about that? So now David has, and he kind of mentioned this, and honestly, it was a little frustrating. And I was talking to David about this, earlier in the year, and he's like, "Oh, well, I've been using micro Voodoo lines on that for a couple years. I mean, I have to update them and stuff like that, but they've been working great." I was like, "Bro, this is something you could have told me about." And so now, if you look at the same chart, so again, here's a 5-minute chart. Here's 39.80. And then if you throw the micro Voodoo lines on here, now here's actionable intelligence at 4,000 at 39.87. Here's a micro fire line at 39.64. And all of a sudden, it's kind of like, oh, this little pop right here that stopped out of nowhere. No, it stopped right at the micro tree line. Okay. And right here, oh my gosh, why did it stop right there? Well, there's the micro fire line. Okay. And that's stuff that's there in advance and you can plan, which is great. This was, I think, something like a week or two ago. We gapped up, and we're just kind of trading here between this major Voodoo line at 40.19 and then down here at 39.80. There's nothing. But the micro Voodoo lines were right here the whole time. And you can see like, wow, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of support. And in fact, I remember on this day, there were some squeezes setting up here. We did some trades with the idea that we would go where to 40.23, which is that micro tree line. And you can see indeed later we popped and went right there. And that's what I mean by being able to plan in advance. Sometimes when we're watching the markets, we could tend to think like, gosh, this market's going to go up forever. It's going to go down forever. But on something like this, you can sit there and say, you know what? I'm fine grabbing 10 points on the S&Ps, whether I'm trading futures, SPY, the SPY ETF directly, calls on SPY, SPX, whatever. We can see the move and then we can plan for it. And that's what's great about it. And also it keeps our expectations in check. Guess what? If we're going to the tree line, we're going to stop there for a while, most likely. So if you got a long call, instead of sitting there hoping like 0 DTE, hoping that it's going to keep going, what happens when you go sideways? You get death by theta decay. So when you pop into that, that's when you're getting that expansion of premium. That's also when you take your shorter term profit. So these are, again, these are trades that we posted in the room, whether we do it as buying a call on SPX or as a spread. But the idea is that, it's like, hey, this is what we're doing. And that's the levels that we're using for this. Okay. So, and I already talked about this. I'm like, when I was talking to David and he's like, hey, David, David said, I really like these micro Voodoo lines. And I'm like, the what? Which was kind of funny. And so So what I want to do now is I've got some trades and some other things I want to show you guys, but what I want to do is I want to turn this over to David. So David again is the creator of these, and there is a lot of kind of science behind them. This is on the webinar tonight. That's not, we don't want to take up a lot of time to talk about like how and why they work. We'll do that on the class that we're having about this on Saturday. But we really just want to kind of show like, why these are important, how I'm using them, how David's using them, how Henry's using them. And you can kind of see if any of these things resonate for you as well. All right. So David, go ahead and take it away.
Hey, thanks, John. And thanks everyone for joining us here tonight. I'm excited to show you the micro voodoo lines. One thing that John mentioned early in his presentation is saying that using the regular voodoo lines can be a little difficult if you want to day trade. And what I want to start out by showing you is that right now, I don't think it's as much about if you want to day trade. It's that if you want to trade, you're probably day trading, right? So this chart is the past couple of weeks of the S&P 500. And if it seems like we haven't gone anywhere for a couple of weeks, it's because we haven't, right? We started last week with a day or two to the upside and then a day or two down with no memory from day to day, right? People wanted to buy back here, but suddenly the next day they didn't, and then suddenly they did. And it's a day or two up and a day or two down and a day or two up. And that's how the market has been recently. And if you wait a couple of weeks, maybe we get a trend that lasts a little bit longer than a day or two. But if you're wanting a trade in a direction that's going to last a little while, you're probably going to be frustrated in this market, right? So when it behaves like this, when there is no memory from day to day, when each day has fresh news of inflation or rate hikes, recession, bank failures, whatever comes up, it can be a struggle to make a sense of the price action. And it can be exhausting to keep up with it if you don't know what's going on. And the secret to knowing what's going on, and the big secret to trading these markets, is knowing the levels that the market is reaching for when it makes these moves. And that's where the micro voodoo lines come in, right? So those are the levels here on the chart. And just like the classic voodoo lines that John showed you, price has a way of moving systematically from level to level. Also, like the classic voodoo lines, the red fire lines, these this level here, those are the most important of the levels. These green tree lines are the second most important of the levels. And when you see that, you can see that basically these are the levels that have kept price bounded since the start of last week. And then the smaller degree levels, you can see, we run up, coming back above the fire line, run into a snow line, down to a snow line for support. We get above that snow line and test and hold it. That sends us up to the tree line, right? These snow lines give us good tradable swings to trade between, to get to and from the major levels. And those have given us good levels to trade from over this time that the market has gone basically nowhere. So the voodoo lines have been helping us make sense of price action for years. Those of you who've heard me talk about it know that we get them by taking all the problems in Elliott wave and turning them on their head, right? This problem with Elliott wave that everyone talks about, that they only work in hindsight. And everybody uses that to dismiss the voodoo lines and or dismiss Elliott wave, right? And focus on the only in hindsight instead of the it works, right? And what the voodoo lines do is they take those levels from the past where there's no debate about what patterns unfolded, and uses the levels from Elliott wave, from the patterns in the past, to find useful, actionable price levels that we can use in current time. And so what the micro voodoo lines do is they just work on the same sort of patterns, but more recent and smaller degree patterns. So they give us levels that are closer together that we can use for short-term intraday trading. I've used them for years, and I've always resisted kind of turning it into a product. As John mentioned, he and I were talking about them a few months ago, and I talked about how they're working, but I would only calculate them pretty much for myself because I didn't want to do the work of regularly updating the levels, because they need to be updated more frequently than the regular voodoo lines. And John said, you know what, we just need to get this out there. And I let him drag me to it. And we are now going to have regularly updated voodoo lines or micro voodoo lines. So just like we haven't gone anywhere in the in the past 2 weeks, yesterday we didn't really go anywhere at all, right? This was our open back here. This was our close. We didn't travel anywhere during the day, right? At least in terms of net distance traveled. But if you look at what happened within the day, right? Prior to the open, we ran up into a micro snow line, down into a micro snow line to find support, up to a micro skyline, one of the least important levels, but still, that's what kept us in check to send us right back down, right? And so the levels make this action, right, which we can only really trade intraday. It makes it so that we can actually get something out of a market, which otherwise you'd step back and say it's not going anywhere. It has no memory. It keeps reversing, and there's nothing really to do otherwise. So if you're struggling in this market, it's probably because you're not watching the right levels. And when you have them on your chart, then suddenly there's a way to play all of these small wiggles, which is all the market is really giving us right now. So and one of the questions I get a lot is, how are these different from the moguls? Now, if you don't know the voodoo lines before tonight, you're not going to understand that question. The moguls are the least important level in the regular classic voodoo lines, right? And they are the ones that are close together. That sort of makes them the small fish in a big pond, right? They're the least important of the levels in the levels that are far apart, right? The important levels in the micro voodoo lines are the big fish in a small pond. There are lots more of them, and therefore much more suitable for intraday trading. All right. So let's take a look at how we use these to trade. I'll show you some trades that I've taken. John and Henry will show you some trades that they've taken. And these are all trades. They're not hypothetical trades. They're all real trades that we've made with our own money. And just going back to what we were looking at with those moves yesterday, where between the end of the day and the beginning of the day, we ended up at the same spot, right? But what I did is I saw this move down at the open, right? Right down just shy of this micro snow line, an important support level that I knew I would want to trade bullishly if we could hold it as support. So I waited till it turned back up. I just used these little dots. You could use a ATR trailing stop. This is trend spark, any number of things, right? Use that to get me in. Saw that we held a minor level. That has me feeling even more bullish, because not only did we move away from this level, but we're ratcheting up level to level. And then when we couldn't hold this micro snow line up here, got out 10.25 points in the ES, $512, right? And all of these trades, right, are pretty much just with price action and the micro voodoo lines. It's really easy to add this to any other system that you have, right? Any other signals that you would have as a trigger. but just working pretty much off the lines alone. That's what I got in the morning. And then of course, in the afternoon, yesterday, if you were watching it, we turned right back down. I didn't get this right from that micro skyline up here, right? I waited until that sent us back down through the micro snow line. And if you can see, it had this little wiggle back up to test the micro snow line from below before continuing down. I love that pattern. And it's one that I will trade all the time, right? That sent us down to the end of the day, covered. Not as big as the morning trade because I didn't grab it up here, just grabbed it down here, 7 points. But still, this is what the market's giving us right now. This is what we have to take. Now, if we look at today, right, another wild ride and another one where forget lack of memory from day to day. What about memory from minute to minute, right? We had the CPI release this morning that launched us up. Then we came back down after the open. Then we bounced back up again. Then it was back down again. Nobody knew what they wanted to do. And when we look at it with the micro voodoo lines, all of a sudden we can see that that bounce on CPI, that sent us right into a micro tree line, right? Down to the snow line, bounced a little bit, right? Down. It went a little through this snow line, but found support back up, right? These are the levels that you wanted to watch today to make sense of this thing. If you look closely, you can see that little pattern I love, breaking the back below the snow line, testing it from below and back down. And again, I didn't catch every single one of these wiggles today. That's not what we're trying to do. It would be nice if we could, but it's tough to scalp the market all day long. So for those of you who are in our options or futures trading room, we were watching this 41.43 level. When I was live with you today, we were trying to buy off this level. The first one didn't work. I took a small little two tick loss trying to get long in here. But then a little later in the day, again, held the micro snow line, take it up to the micro skyline, right? Just shy of 8 points. And then in the afternoon, right, we had the FOMC minutes. We came back below this micro snow line. That's when I shorted for, honestly, what would be a pretty good day trade on any day. 23 points. It wiggled around the lower snow line, but held below it and sent us right back down. So just really all price action. I get a little bit of guidance on the entry from these trend spark dots that I was showing you earlier, but it's really just that easy, right? Once you learn how to see the systematic movement between the levels. So those are the trades I wanted to show you and what I wanted to tell you about the micro voodoo lines. One other question, just before I pass this on to Henry, one other question that I get all the time is, how does this work with the regular voodoo lines? So these lows are just above the fire line in the regular voodoo line set. Now, you didn't need to know that to take any of these trades. The micro voodoo lines can be used completely on their own. Now, for anyone who has the voodoo lines, everything and have gained experience with in the regular voodoo lines is completely leverageable to the micro voodoo lines. That is, once you've gotten comfortable with them and the systematic way that price moves from level to level to level, all of that is completely leverageable on smaller time frames to what we're doing here with the micro voodoo lines. Similarly, if you start with the micro voodoo lines and decide one day when we're not bound to short-term intraday trading all the time to use the regular voodoo lines as well, everything you learn getting up to speed with the micro voodoo lines is leverageable to the regular voodoo lines. Anyway, with that, I know Henry has some trades that he wants to show you, and then John as well. So let me pass it on to Henry, and I'll be back with you for Q&A in a little bit.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. And thank you, traders, for joining us this evening. I know that I am not alone when I tell you how thankful I am to have found David and his work through the Voodoo lines. When you're only looking at price, it can be extremely difficult to know what the inflection points of the day are likely to be. You know, it's entirely too easy to think that the flow of price is moving lower and to get short at the lows, or to chase a bullish move by getting long at the highs. But once you approach the markets with micro voodoo lines, you're going to have so much more clarity in your day-to-day trading decisions. As you can see here, this is that same chart, but when we add this single indicator to the price axis, we suddenly have definition and something that we can actually plan trades around. Instead of trying to short the lows of the day, we can see the Nasdaq coming into the micro fire line and finding support. Instead of chasing the end of day rally, we can see the index tagging the micro tree line to the tick before selling off into the close. So let's take a minute and look at a few examples, starting with this screenshot of the chat log from the Voodoo Mastery Room. I wanted to show you the time-stamped conversation where we had this discussion about a level in the SPX that could be the level of support for the open. That it might have been the low of the day, possibly to the tick. So if we look at a chart from that day of that conversation, we can start to put the setup into perspective by remembering what this Thursday was like. This was the Thursday just after the Fed had announced the most recent quarter-point rate hike, and the SPX had gapped higher to start the session, then steadily sold off for the majority of the day. This trending, steadily lower price action offers very little in the way of a bounce until price starts to stabilize just ahead of this snow line, right? So moving down into the end of the session, getting closer and closer down into this level, and you can see the rip that, occurred into the end of the day. The setup that I want to show you is the gap lower that completes the tag of the snow line, essentially moving down into the level, finding a bid from there, and then holds the pullback too. You'll notice that the first attempt was a little bit below, but then notice here how it's to the tick, and here to the tick as the level of support. This is the setup that completes the, get above and hold the pullback too, and this is where I opened up the sale of some SPX put credit spreads. Notice that the support from, you get through the open, you get through the European close, but from there, the support is never really tested again, right? We move higher entirely through the session, and we go on to close some 35 points higher. So let's look at another example of this with a recent micro voodoo setup. As you may have heard, the fire line is the most important of the voodoo line study set, carries the most significance, and will almost always offer some kind of a trade opportunity, or at least some information about the current state of the market. It's one of the first things that I look for each morning, as I want to make sure that I'm aware of these levels on a daily basis. This open was similar to the previous example in a few ways, but I start by noting that the most critical area of support comes in below where we open. So again, here is the day's open. And I note that we may have to have a little bit of patience because this particular open was not against a direct level. So we remain patient through the opening hour. You'll see the move that comes down and tests the fire line And this is where we start to become more interested in actually looking for an opportunity. This again exhibits that, get above, hold the pullback to, and I sold, a put credit spread through SPX because those options have so much better liquidity than what you're going to find in the Nasdaq. But it's one of the spots that I look at this and say, if tech is going to find support, well, that is very likely to move over into the rest of the broad market so it can influence the way that you trade, the other various index products. If we look at how this session closes, right, you can see not only that the fire line held a support having never been broken, but also moves higher all the way into the session, completing something that you're only going to find with these Voodoo lines, and that is the Voodoo roadmap. So these roadmaps are a key part of my trading plan and are a way of studying markets that not only provide critical areas of support or resistance, these inflection points, but also provide a map for how a market should move from that inflection point. That's to say that when a fire line is tested and holds with a fair degree of precision, not only are we confirming this as the current inflection point, but we're starting to be able to predict where it might be headed, right? Completion of one of its primary roadmaps would be a rally up into the tree line up here at 12,993. And as you can see, not only was this roadmap completed, it was made with absolute precision, right? It marked the high of the day. So not only am I showing you a roadmap that helps you find a target, it's one thing to find a target and just keep on progressing through it, but this finds a target that is the end of that move, and that's incredibly helpful, not just for entering trades, but also in trade management and in choosing some of the best targets possible. So let's look at this pattern again, right? It's just the logic applied over and over, and that is that fire lines lead to tree lines, and this relationship shows another perfect example of this movement in price, or again, what we're all referring to as the Voodoo roadmaps. This was the April 6th open, and heading into a 3-day weekend, I was looking for an opportunity to establish some bullish positions. When scanning through my micro Voodoo grid, I found that shortly after the open, the cash Nasdaq had fallen right into a micro fire line. Right? So more of this kind of situation where the market has a shock and awe degree to it, right? You see the movement that gives you this gap. And what a perfect spot to assess this, because how many traders are going to make bad decisions here that are going to look at this gap that starts the day and think, oh goodness, that's so bearish, let's go in and get short. But knowing that there was this micro fire line down here, and knowing that this was the most important level of the study set, it gets my direct attention. And between the extreme sentiment and the bullish trigger in the ATR trailing stop, I was able to set up the sale of a few put credit spreads. Now, reading sentiment is a bit of an art, and there are several ways that you can use the put-call ratio, but one of my favorites is to look for readings above 1 when I consider the market to be on support. We can see that this example worked especially well with the NDX micro fire line and was a spot that allowed me to take a little more risk with my position, knowing that I could use a fairly tight stop. Most of the time, entering at those fire lines, you're going to know pretty quickly if you are correct or not. And when you get a strong directional move off levels like this, there's a few strategies you can use. One of my favorites is the sale of deep in the money puts. This is part of the 0 day till expiration focus. It's one of the hottest things in the current market. And it can be combined with your typical premium selling type strategies, which are usually done out of the money to create excellent risk reward situations. So for this particular setup, I was willing to take a full size position And the ATR trailing stop kept me in until the move to the tree line roadmap was completed and there were some meaningful monetary targets to be had. So again, just annotating this for you, the gap down into the fire line, support found at that most critical level, the shift through the ATR trigger, and then the roadmap that is that fire line to tree line and is completed pretty directly. So that ATR trailing stop is a very simple trigger tool, but it really makes for an excellent complement to the Voodoo lines. You know, triggers are great, and most traders use them in one way or another, and we're always like, what's the best possible trigger? But what you really want are good levels, right? And that is what the micro Voodoo lines provide. So, triggers can help keep you out of levels that aren't going to hold and maximize your profits. But really, they're also a good tool to help you try to get out of everything a market has to offer in a given session, right? If it wants to keep trending, this tool will let us do this. It's going to work best on those very directional days, but it can also be handy in catching reversals. And it's one of my favorite ways to stay in sync with short-term price action. So, great levels and good entries are a solid foundation to building your best trades, and that is really what I've been able to, get into with this edition of this study set from David. So, I'm very thankful for it. I hope you found some insight in the way that I'm identifying these, intraday levels, triggering against them, and finding opportunity on the day-to-day movement. So with that, I will hand things back over to John and hope to continue the conversation with you guys tomorrow in the chat room.
Awesome. Thank you, Henry. And one of the things I'm really excited about doing this class with Henry and David, we've got some parts of our trading styles overlap and some of them are different. And I always appreciate how methodical they both are in their approach. And sometimes I'll find where, I may really get excited about something just because I see things lining up and just like, wow, I'm just going to dive into this. And when it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, it's like, okay, I got to scramble out of this. And that's really not something, Henry and David go through because, they kind of go through something in such a systematized way. And so I like that. And I always find ways to try to, it's that fine line of like, okay, when I see a setup that it's like, wow, this is one of those things you really want to take advantage of, being able to take it, but also doing that in, maybe a little bit more methodical way. So I'm very excited about doing the class with both of them, as it's just, we've been working together for 10 plus years, and it's fun to work with other traders that you have grown to respect over the years and just kind of see what aha moments that I'll get as well. So, which is pretty awesome. So a couple things I want to show you, and so today was an interesting day because it was just kind of a choppy day. No, it wasn't a choppy day. It was a weird day, right? And we'll look at the price action here. But I knew that today I was just going to be kind of out. Like I was going to be in for the morning session. And then after the morning session, my plan, I was going to go, I had some stuff planned with my kids and I wanted to go do that. So I just had one day trade that set it up on the Qs. And, it was a long trade. The day was down. It was a long trade, but it was good for $4,600. And, okay, so what was it? So if we look at this, so here is the chart of today. And this is my preferred day trading chart. So you can see here, it's a 1 minute chart. This happens to be the Nasdaq. And down here, I've got the quick hits. That's how I kind of determine, all right, when things are turning. And so, of course, the initial reaction came up. You can't see it here, but the market's gapped up after the number. They kind of sold off when the market opened. And at this point, I wasn't doing anything. Now, I did miss a trade right here. This was just kind of like as I was logging into the room. So I was a little honestly distracted where I'm like answering questions and things like that. That was a perfectly fine setup where we came up to the snow line. We got sell signals based on quick hits. And you can see that we walked, right down. So that was actually a pretty good trade. But the trade that I was looking for was when I saw this level here and that we were coming back down, I was looking for, and we had this, nice bear flag, as Chris would say, is I wanted to see a test of the tree line here. Now, there's two ways to do this. You can get short and just say, yeah, I'm just going to write it down. But I just wanted to be patient. I was looking for this to happen, and then I wanted to get in. So then when it comes down here, I don't want to sit there and catch a falling piano, right? So what I started looking for, these little dots that's showing that the momentum is turning on multiple time frames. And then, of course, this arrow here is a confirmation that we've got, so here you can get in and just stop at the lows. So your risk on a trade like this is super small, and then just kind of let it go here. So here you can see we kind of went up to this first snow line, and that was the first level. We were watching this together, and it's like, look, this is how it works. We get to the snow line, we're going to pause. But because all of the quick hits levels were still moving higher, I was looking for a continuation. In fact, guess what? There's a big old tree line setting up here acting as a magnet. And sure enough, we came up to the tree line. Now, at this point, I left. There was another good move later in the day to the downside that I missed. But that, to me, was kind of like the ideal setup. You can make your trading goals with one well-planned, well-thought-out day trade a day. You don't have to swing, you don't have to do 10 trades. And that, to me, was the one that made the most sense today. And I thought it was pretty clean and pretty clear and pretty easy. But yeah, it really does respect and ride these lines, which is, this is why I'm the one who called them voodoo lines. David had another name for them that was more, respectful. I was just like, this is voodoo. Why do these work? Because when he told me about them, I'm like, yeah, it's still voodoo. So that's why they're called the voodoo lines. I don't know why they work, but my gosh, they work so good. And I think that's the great thing about them. And not a lot of people use them, right? I mean, here at Simpler, for those of you that know about them, we all use them, right? And we love them, but it's not something that, there's not hedge funds out there using them. So it's kind of a nice play in between all the algo stuff that's going on. So I think with stuff like this, it really comes back to our goals, as a trader. And there definitely are times when, like, a monthly squeeze fires along. Yeah, guess what? We want to take some longer term swing trades, but that's not the situation that we're in right now. Instead of looking for these big 7-figure trades, I'm really dialed into the idea of, like, can I just grind out 1% a day? Now, I know that doesn't sound sexy, but 1% a day, 5% a week, that's 1,200% a year, if you're not wiring money out. So it does have an impact, and it really does push towards consistency, which means you want to cut your losers fast. How do you know to cut your losers fast? Because if it breaks one of those key levels, get the hell out. Don't get emotional about it. This is not your dad or mom reprimanding you that you're never going to amount to anything, because that's the kind of stuff that comes up, right? It's like, I'm not going to take my stop loss. Just follow your damn plan. But it's easier to follow your damn plan when you have levels in place that can help you out. So just to give you an idea of this, so this is what 2.5% a week looks like. Start off with 100,000. Now, obviously, the idea here that you're going to make 2.5% exactly every week, that's not going to happen. I'm just going to be straight up with you. The idea is to average it out. One day you may make 3,000. The next day you may make 500. Maybe you'll lose 1,000. But once you kind of get into a groove, what happens is you learn to trade less. You learn to be pickier about your trades, and that's when your equity curve starts to improve. Now, at 5% a week, which is 1% a day, you can see you start with 100,000, that ends up at 1.3 million, give or take. So, I mean, it is legit. And again, the fewer trades you do, the better. Generally, the more trades you do, the more wobbly this is going to look. And if you're looking at 5% a week, it doesn't have to be exactly 1% a day. Take Monday off. Okay. Wait for Tuesday. Wait for, a nicer, cleaner trade to set up. Different things like that. So just some things like that to keep in mind. And I always say, like, look, in trading, a lot of times can people get off there's so many insane things happening right now. I'm getting emailed and calls and texts. It's like, oh my God, the dollar, crude oil, inflation, none of that matters to the trader. Okay. As a trader, our job is to generate income on the capital that we have at our disposal. And that's it. We don't need to look at the news. We don't need to understand what the Fed's going to do next, right? Our goal is to create an equity curve that starts at the lower left of our screen and kind of works its way to the upper right. And that's it. You don't even need to know what's happening in the world. You don't need to know who's president of the United States to make that happen, right? So we want to focus on what's important here. And what's important here is results. All right. And the simpler you can make that, the better. You don't have to know everything that's happening in the world to be a trader. In fact, I would argue that the more you know, the less likely you are going to be a successful trader, because it's going to be too easy to get a bias. The world's coming to an end. I got to put all my money in SLV, which works once in a while. So one of the questions that's come up is, does it work with quick hits? And so I showed that example just now with quick hits. And I want to show a couple of examples here too. But the idea is that it's a perfect, if you already have quick hits, if you don't worry about it. This is something we will talk about during the Saturday class. But if you don't, it's fine. But I found that they're a perfect companion with quick hits. So it's kind of like honestly a missing piece with quick hits. So we're watching like, okay, you get to a level here and it's like, we expect it to start to roll, right? And then when there's a big fire line here, that acts as a magnet. And so there's a couple things here. One is we can kind of expect it to fall to the fire line. There's actually a good possibility that it will, but then we also know that it likely won't push through it. So guess what? This is where we can take our profits. And especially doing zero DTE, you really want to take your profits with this thrust. And when it ends, once you start to chop around and move your way up, like here, if you throw on a put credit spread, you're going to start to lose a lot of value right there, right? Or if you bought puts, you're going to start to lose a lot of value right there, not only intrinsically, but also the theta decay and all that. So you want to, when you slam into a key level like that, just get the hell out. That's your money right there. And so that's stuff that's been super, super helpful as well. Also, too, with this, I found it's easier, with quick hits by itself without the levels. I was typically focused on spreads, and I still like them. I still do them. But I really appreciate it with the micro Voodoos. It allows me to trade directionally, whether I'm buying calls or puts on SPY, QQQ, SPX, or, NQ futures, ES futures, which is nice because you can do that directional action. On this particular one here, we bought some calls on SPX. And when I'm trading options on day trade, I like to use the DOM because then I can throw out orders a lot faster. You just click like a futures platform. And then this is one we posted in the room. The markets, of course, with long puts, the markets fall, the put value goes up, and then boom, we just get out. So that was nice, kind of a quick, that was a quick $30,000 day on the long calls. And then we still made money on the long puts, sorry. The 39.50 puts. And then we also had the call credit spread that we just got to sit there and collect theta on too. So you kind of the best of both worlds there, which I really like. So with the major Voodoo lines, our edge was always knowing in advance where a move was likely to reverse or terminate. Okay. And that helped us to plan in advance both entries and exits. And until now, we've never been able to do that on a day trading basis. And this has been a huge advantage in this market. For folks that were on the webinar, I think it was 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, they've already got these tools. They're already using them and they're already raving about them and just how it's like, wow, the market really makes a lot more sense now that we're able to see them. If you don't have them, this can be just a very frustrating market. Like today, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Who cares? It terminated at the tree line. Take your profits. What else do you want? So it just kind of keeps it very, very simple. And I always say, life is about timing as well. Life is all about timing. The unreachable becomes reachable. The unavailable becomes available. The unattainable, attainable. Have the patience, wait it out, and it's all about timing. And, one of my trading mentors told me, this was Marianne. I've told the story of her before. And she said, sweet little Southern gal who swung 100 lots in the S&P is like, John, I've worked with a lot of traders as a broker at Merrill Lynch, and they just don't have the patience gene. And if they don't learn patience, they will never, ever, ever make it as a trader. And that always stuck with me. And because I remember when I spent a week trading with her, and she did 3 trades. One day, there was, the S&Ps were up 50, down 30. She didn't do any trades. And I was kind of chastising her. I was trading that day. I made some money. I'm kind of like tooting my own horn. And she just kind of looked at me like, well, there wasn't any trades. My setups didn't happen. And then the next day, I had like 3 trades, 2 got stopped out. I lost money. She killed it. She caught this entire move just doing 1 trade. Why? Because her levels were hit and she put on her trade and she followed her plan. That always stuck with me. So that patience. So it's not about catching every move. It's not about knowing everything. It's just about having a few well thought out, well planned trades per day from a day trading perspective and per week from a swing trading perspective. And since the trades in this market, and typically these kind of trades don't last overnight. And look, if you're not over trading, if you're over trading, it's going to be tough. But if you're under trading, just 1 or 2 well thought out trades a day, then overnight you're flat. It's much less anxiety in this kind of a market because this, you wake up and you don't really know what's going to happen. It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. I love this because, sometimes you got to just adapt or die. And, you see the math works out if we put 90% into some YOLO 3-day calls, retirement plan. And this is just something that you want to, as traders, we have the flexibility to adapt to the markets. And this is something a lot of investors don't understand or even try to do. So I always say in trading, know your why. Otherwise, it can become this weird video game. For me, I like to collect rare coins. Honestly, it's probably got to be a little bit of an obsession that I finally stopped as I was trying to get, getting the collection of $10 gold, early $10 gold pieces, $20 liberties. And so I'm good now, but that was fun. But I also like to use it for vacations. We have a ranch in Wimberley where we have zebras and things like that. And then, and just being able to hang out and do experiences. Know your why. It makes trading more meaningful. I'm a huge, huge, huge advocate of wiring money out and doing stuff with it, whether it's putting in the tangible assets like coins or something like that, or experiences. That then ties that meaning to what you're doing. Otherwise, it's kind of like a video game, and it's, there's more to life than making sure that your account balance is growing, right? You got to experience life as well, and trading is a way to do that. So who are these tools for? Definitely day traders. I mean, that's no questions there. I think any day trading strategy will benefit from this. I can't think of one that wouldn't. I say frustrated 0 DTE traders, 0 days to expiration. A lot of times you get in and all of a sudden it reverses and all your profit's gone. Well, guess what? If it gets up to a key level, micro voodoo line, get out, right? Also, kind of a hint here, I found that some of the times just doing like the QQQ trade we did today, I did it as the next day's expiration just because I minimized theta decay that way. And so that's a little bit of an edge there too. Navigating that void. Why did the market just turn? And look, conservative traders are fine too. If your goal is to grind out 1% a day for income, these are the perfect levels to do this if you don't want to have overnight risk. Okay. So and we've talked about this. So, and who are they not for? If you are only looking at position trading where you're holding, positions for months to years, look, you don't need these. The micro voodoo lines are for smaller moves. If your current intraday trading is going great, sometimes if you're really dialed in, you don't necessarily need or want to change that, right? However, I do think that even if you're really dialed in, this may give you an edge in terms of some levels. And of course, if you are looking for like 100% automated black box system, this is not that, right? This is something that you're watching. So just a heads up on that. So at the end of the day, what happens if you have the right strategy and the tools for the current volatility we're experiencing, right? Because you got to adapt. Clarity is power. Now you can see these levels every day. You can plan in advance. Like, gosh, if this gets there, I want to take action, right? It's not a surprise. And also, too, it's nice if you see a micro fire line or a micro tree line, you kind of expect the markets to go and test those. Like, it's not a surprise that the market suddenly turns around. And that really makes it nice. It's more like a map, okay? So it's pretty awesome. So, all right. So how do you get these tools, right? So David and Henry and myself, for the first time ever, the three of us are going to be teaching a class together. This is going to be this upcoming Saturday, the 15th. Now, the 15th, we're going to be talking about the strategy. By the way, the tools are included with the class, and we'll talk about that in a second. Now, I want to encourage everyone in the strategy class. We are going to talk about, David's going to spend some time talking about the origin story of the voodoo lines. He'll talk about what symbols that they're on, and then obviously he's going to talk about how he trades them. Henry's going to talk about how he trades them. I'm going to talk about how I trade them. But what I encourage everyone to consider is that we are also going to live trade. Okay. And that's how you can see, the best explanation I can think of here is that if you read a book on golf, if you've never played golf and you read a book on golf and then you go golf, you're going to suck at golf. You've got to be able to swing a club in front of a professional so they can tell you, like, look, you need to loosen your grip. You need to drive that shoulder back further and get that actual tactical experience. And so while the class, I think, is going to be invaluable, and of course you're going to get the tools, I would encourage everyone to also consider the live trading where you're going to get that more tactical experience in doing this. Okay. All right, so this is the link right here. I think we can push this link to you guys if you want it. It's simplertrading.com/levels. There you go. And you can click on that. And what's going to happen is you'll see around there's two main packages. Now, the main thing I want to point out here is that there is a deadline coming up. Okay, there's the pricing for this is good until Saturday. And I was, I'm always mindful of this, just for if you're looking, especially if you're looking to be a little bit more economical. So after the Saturday class, the price of the quick start is going to go up to $697. The price of the Elite, which includes the live trading, is going to go to $1297. But most importantly, is that the Voodoo lines, because they are updated periodically, our major Voodoo lines, they have a subscription fee of $47 a month. The micro Voodoo lines will also have a subscription fee of $47 a month. However, that is going to be waived, for anybody who signs up for the Saturday class. So that saves about, almost $600 a year right there. So by signing up now, tonight is great, because if you sign up tonight, you're going to get the tools, but you still have till Saturday. You're going to save, if you're going to do the Elite, right, you're going to save $800 right there, because you're going to save $300 on the class, and then you're not going to have to pay $600 a year in the updates. So anyway, hopefully it all made sense. So let's review what we get here. You get the strategy class, you get the actual indicator, and we've got them for Thinkorswim, TradingView, a couple of others. There's a slide that shows them all. And so one question we'll get is like, hey, I have Fidelity, what do I do? The best thing to do is, if you like Fidelity, look, keep trading on Fidelity, but just open up a Thinkorswim account. They don't charge any data. Put like $100 in it. It's your money. They're not going to take it. And again, it's free. You can look at the charts and still trade wherever you want. And that's kind of a common thing that we found that people will do. Strategy class. And then, so you get unlimited micro Voodoo lines updates. Of course, you get the recordings. And then for those of you that are newer to options or futures, we're going to include an options 101 class and a futures 101 class. You can also just do these on, the indexes themselves. If you just want to trade, 1,000 shares of SPY, that's totally fine as well. Or ES futures, right? That's totally fine as well. Now, the Elite includes all of that plus 4 days of live trading, which we spread out over 3 or 4 weeks. So we can come together, we can trade live, you can ask questions, updated questions and things like that. And then last but not least, for those of you that are not members of our Gold Room, at the end of this, if you're not a member, there'll be an opportunity to sign up for a trial. I would encourage everyone to do that. It's a free trial. And, just do the trial period if you want, but that's where we're going to do this stuff every day. And we do other trades as well, but that's kind of like, you can kind of come back to the well and see what's happening there. Okay. All right. So let me go over a couple of things and then also answer questions. Now, if you are a member, by the way, you do get an additional discount on top of the discount. So we always say, look, there's benefits of membership. So just understand that if you are a member and you're logged in, these other additional discounts will apply to your account. Okay. All right. So the Voodoo Lines class is going to be Saturday, April 12th. It's going to start at noon Central. Normally our classes go about 4 or 5 hours. Now there's going to be 3 of us presenting, like Henry and I each for about an hour or so, a little over an hour, David a little bit longer, because he's also got to do the origin stories, but we're really just going to zone in and kind of lock down, like, look, this is how we're using them. And that's going to be the main thing there. Of course, the micro Voodoo lines, we do have them for Thinkorswim, TradingView, MotiveWave. MotiveWave is a really cool little software program, and then TradeStation. And the live trading sessions right now, these could change, but I think these are pretty locked in. April 18th, 24th, 27th, and the 2nd. And we do it for the 2 hours in the morning. Now, during those 2 hours in the morning, that's when we're going to be on the mic. We kind of will rotate through. But then after that, as trades set up, we'll still post. You will still be around to answer questions. But that's kind of the main trades really happen in the morning. And then, if there's stuff happening later in the day, there's kind of an ongoing dialogue, text chat back and forth in the room and stuff like that too. So it's kind of all day, but the main kind of meat there is 8:20 to 10:30. And then you guys can also talk to each other in the room and exchange ideas and stuff like that as well. If one thing we do have is with PayPal is that it's called PayPal Credit. You can utilize this, and then essentially you have no payments for 6 months, and there's 0% interest. So we have had people do this. They do it with credit, and then they pay for the class with trades and then wire money and pay it off. Obviously, I can't guarantee that's going to happen, but we've heard about that a lot, and that's kind of cool. That's obviously a return on investment right there that you can track. So again, just reviewing what's included here. In fact, let's go to the page. I think, let me know if this loads up here. Maybe it won't. So am I sharing this? I might not be. I don't think I am. Let me try something here real quick. Share screen. Watch me just blow everything up here. Okay, perfect. All right, so when you go to the sales page, this is what you'll see. And in fact, we could even look at the Voodoo lines right now and see what's happening here. So if you look at what's happening now on the S&P futures, they're down. They did come down to 4110, and guess what? They bounced off the micro fire line. So this is overnight. We just kind of dragged down. Fire line held. So if you're wondering why 4110 has been holding, there's a micro fire line right there. Okay. The other thing too during the class is I'll get, if you guys don't have this, there's like these key times of day that we found that 8:45, oftentimes there's a reversal. At 9:20, oftentimes there's a reversal. I'll give you this tool as well at the class. I mean, it's an easy one to put together, but sometimes it's nice just being able to see it on the chart like that. And then of course the 10:30 European close, and then you got 2:20, 2:40 in the close. Those are all kind of key times as well. And it's just good to be aware. Good to be aware of those. So if you come over here, you'll see this by the indicator, and you can just click on that, and that'll just take you down. You can, of course, scroll down here too. So a couple things I want to point out. You can see the timer here. The timer is important. You got 3 days, 3 hours, 52 minutes, and 6 seconds. That's basically when the class will be starting. And you're looking at that. You want to make sure that you lock in the lower price, right? And that's where you do that. And I think that's about it. There's some testimonials here. There's some information on us. I don't need to read through the whole site or anything like that. And there we go. So, and again, to get to this page, you will go to, I'll switch back over here too. But so now that I've kind of gone through that, I'm going to kind of pause here, and I just want to see what questions are coming up. Myself, I can answer them. David can answer them. Henry can answer them. It's 8:07. We've all been together here for an hour and 10 minutes, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But if you have questions, now's the time to ask, and we can spend some time answering them. Other than quick hits, what is everyone using for direction? So good question. So let me put these on a little bit larger time frame. So one of the things I like to look at here is, as I'm looking at these. So I talked earlier about, okay, here's the major Voodoo lines, right? So I'm going to put the major Voodoo lines here are going to be on the right. Let me get rid of these price levels here. So here's a daily chart, right? And I can see from this that there's some big levels here. Look, we came down to the snow line. This 4101 level on the futures has been hugely important. Now, look at this. There's this gap here, right? There's this information gap. And that's where the micro Voodoo lines can really, really help out. And so by an information gap, I just mean, okay, well, great. What do we do between 4204 and 4101? Okay, you can see that 4204 is indeed important. And then we've also kind of batted around back and forth here. But, if you're just trading the major Voodoo lines, 4101 is an action item. 4204 is an action item. Those are 100 points away. So then what I can do is I'm going to change this to like a 5-minute chart right now. And maybe and then I can come over here and say, all right, what are the micro Voodoo lines doing right here? So I can come over here, I've got them on here already. Micro Voodoos, I'll hit show study. Now you'll notice here, I have hide skylines, no, hide snow lines, no. I'm going to leave it like that for now. But initially, there'll be kind of a, this is a nice roadmap here, right? So when I'm looking at this, and I'll switch this to a 15-minute chart so we can see a little bit more history here. So when I'm looking at this, now you can tell obviously when the futures are trading overnight, the overnight action here, but I always like to look at things like, okay, what happens if we spike up? If you spike up into like a tree line, it's very, very rare that you're just going to keep on going. And in fact, spiking up above a tree line is one of the best shorts I've found, because at the very least, it comes back down to the tree line, and oftentimes that's when something really ugly can happen. And guess what? When there's a big fire line below here, it acts as a magnet. So up here, where normal people might be getting really, really bullish and the market's going to go crazy, we see this and say, man, there's this big fire line down here. Are we going to show signs that we are going to go test that? And of course, that's when you can use like some, different oscillators as well. But just the levels themselves are super helpful like that. And if we go back here to, there was another one here. Yeah. Huge sell-off here, right? And look, we get to the micro fire line, and look, it's not we didn't come at 4104 exactly and bounce, but it dropped through it by like 3 points, 4 points, 5 points, and back and forth, back and forth. So when you know this in advance, you can work with this. What happens is a lot of times people in the markets, they see something like this, and right here, they're shorting it, right? That's the last thing that we're looking at doing. We would never do that. If anything, we'd short something like, oh man, we're breaking through the snow line. Let's short that, right? So just a few different things like that. But I found that it makes it really, really helpful when we're looking at that. So great question there. Let's see what other questions that come up. Yeah, so now the major voodoo lines are on hundreds of symbols. The minor voodoo lines, so we do have them on what we say is like the stuff that we like to trade the most. Okay, so here's Tesla. Tesla today gapped up nice, and then it came down to the tree line. I had bought some calls for earnings. Tomorrow, I'm looking to see if this fire line holds, the tree line here holds, and I will buy some for that as well. And then if we look at ADI, and by the way, let's go back here and look at Tesla. The major voodoo line, this was here in advance, remember? Where did this meltdown stop? Major fire line. Where did this rally stop? Major fire line, right? Right now we're stuck between the major fire line and the tree line. I'm kind of looking for earnings to see if we can kind of come back up to that fire line. I mentioned ADI. There was another one. No, it wasn't that one. Maybe it was AMD. Yeah, there we go. So there's a handful of stocks here like this that, we like to trade. They're active and, but not a ton. The main thing here is like on the indexes, I think it's important because look, if the Qs, if you see this, like, wow, we just died right here. We gapped up right into the tree line, right? If we look at the Qs dying here, guess what else is going to die here? Every tech stock. Microsoft is going to go down. Apple's going to go down, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why we really like to focus on the indexes. And even if you're day trading Microsoft, great, watch the Qs because guess what? So go the Qs, so goes Microsoft, right? Okay. Yeah, Apple, AMD, JP Morgan, Nvidia, Tesla, Wells Fargo. Do they work on? Yeah, so I just showed ES, right? They're great on ES. Also on NQ. So same thing here. So you can see kind of the, the action today, spiked up here. And the whole reversion here was back to the tree line. That was kind of the main, this was the main trade that I did today, back up to that tree line. Yeah, if you're already a gold member, you actually get an additional discount on the class and everything. So it's you get an extra kicker on there, which is great. Do I get the regular voodoo lines with this? Okay, so the good question. The regular voodoo lines do not come with this. However, we had a lot of questions about that. And so what we're going to do, and we're putting our heads together right now, is during the class, if there are people in the class on Saturday that don't have the major voodoo lines, we're looking at some kind of a package where you can get them at a really nice discount. There's a few, like something like, we use the quick hits, we use the major voodoo line. So if there's additional tools there that you like, the class will be an opportunity to save a lot of money on those tools as well. And so we just want to, we didn't realize we're getting a lot of questions about that. So that's something that we've been working on and we'll have ready for Saturday. Yeah, what is the difference between the micro voodoo and the micro voodoo alternate? Okay, so I'm going to honestly, that's going to be a better question. And David is going to go through that during the class. It's going to take like 30 minutes to go through it now. But the short version is that there's the main voodoo and the alternate, and it's two different patterns. And so David's going to show you how he looks at both of them. And they're close. Like I'll look at both of them. A lot of times if I'm not thinking about it, I just keep one on there. The reason to look at it is just there's a slight different pattern that he likes to look at and to see which those levels produce. And so David will go through that in detail on Saturday. Let's see. As I do my own. Let's see. Do I get rid of every lines? 4110. Nice. 4110. Yeah. So I'm just going through the questions. A lot of these I've already answered. Yeah. Okay. So which one should I do? I'm on the fence. All right. Look, if you're not sure, this is the easy thing. If you're not sure, do this. There'll be an opportunity to upgrade later. I can tell you, and the reason we do this, you notice here that, look, 4 days of live trading, normally if we're doing something like 4 days of live trading, that's like 1997. But, we talked about this, and it's like, look, this is important on something like this where it's micro voodoo lines. We need to, people need to learn how to use this. And so we deliberately elected to keep this, it's a very small bump up, I think, from here. And I get it. If you're trading like $1,000 account, that's not a small bump. But the idea with this, which is why we have the kind of the PayPal credit as well. But the idea with this is that this gives you all the tools you need. We're going to, you get the strategy, you get the tool, you're going to save $564 per year because you're not, by doing this, by getting in before the deadline, you're not going to have to pay the subscription fee. We're going to do the class. You're going to have the recordings of the class. You're going to get options 101 and futures 101. And that is in case you're new to options or new to futures, right? You can do that. The only difference in the Elite is that you also get the 4 days of trading. So if you're on the fence, if you want to do it, first of all, congratulations. I think this is going to be a great investment in your future and is going to make things much more consistent in your trading. And I, we don't do stuff like this unless we're excited about it and we can see the value of it and it's working for us as well. That being said, if you're trying to figure out, like, do I do the quick start or the Elite? You can sign up for the quick start. You can always upgrade to the Elite later. But I do believe that if you do the Elite now, you're getting the best price, as far as I understand it. So if you're on the fence, I would just do the live trading as well. It's like there's zero downside to doing the live trading, and there's only upside in the additional things that you can learn by doing the live trading. So that is my suggestion. I know it probably sounds self-serving because it's like I'm sitting here showing you a class. Yeah, do the most expensive one. But from a trading perspective and being able to learn that knowledge and apply it to your own trading goals, the live trading will help. And I know that for a fact. And that's, a lot of times out on the internet, you're going to see classes out there for trading. None of them do live trading. Why? Because they're scared shitless to live trade in front of people. We're not. Okay. Because we know we have confidence in these tools and we are fine trading live in front of other people. All right. Let's see here. What other classes come up? I am unable to attend on Saturday. Is the recorded session up shortly afterward? Okay, so good. And there's two questions here. One, I'm unable to attend Saturday. When's the next time you're going to do this class? Okay, there ain't a next time. We do these one time because we want to go back to trading. So we do it one time. If you can't attend live, I would still encourage you to sign up because you can get the recording. Obviously, you'll still get the tool, but you'll get the recording of the class, and it's usually up pretty quick. And by pretty quick, like 48 hours, usually sooner than that. It's definitely not something that you're waiting for weeks at a time. I'm in love with quick hits. It took me a few weeks to tweak them for my time frames, and now it's my go-to. But sometimes Joseph, I would find one thing I found was with the micro voodoo line. Now, obviously, if there's a major voodoo line in play, obviously I'm looking at that, right? As we talked about, those major voodoo lines, sometimes they're 100 points apart, but I really found that these micro voodoo lines were kind of the missing piece to, I think, really dialing in on the quick hits. Obviously, it's nice to kind of see the turns in the quick hits, but with the micro voodoo lines, we kind of now know where those turns are likely to happen. And that's really kind of been a big aha. It just makes it a lot easier. Voodoo is the anti-FOMO. My God, Brian, I couldn't have said it better myself. The big thing about trading is, especially if we get what I call, we go unconscious, meaning we're running on adrenaline, we're running on dopamine. We're not aware of ourselves as human beings. And we start doing stupid stuff. Oh, I'm gonna buy at the highs. I'm gonna short at the lows. The voodoo lines keep us in check. It's like, wow, I think this market's going to explode. It's like, oh my God, we can look at it and see we're right at a tree line. We ain't going to explode from here. We're going to stop. And God, it's so much nicer trading that way versus trying to really get excited about a potential move. Okay, so good questions all around. All right, let me go back to let's see if I can make sure I do this correctly here. Okay, so there we go. So I think we've answered all the questions. I've been here for about an hour and 20 minutes. I don't want to take up too much time. If there's any other, see if there's any other questions here. David, if you saw any questions that I missed, feel free to hop on. Otherwise, I just kind of want to leave them with the sales page here. We're here. We can, you can call us, you can email us. We're going to be here. We're going to answer questions here in the chat as well. Okay, great question, Dwayne. How do you, and Dwayne Johnson, I'm glad you're taking time off from your acting career to be with us here tonight. That's what we appreciate it. How do you develop the confidence in the indicator, and what do you look for? What do you look for to verify that the Voodoo lines hold? Okay, so it's a great question, and of course, this is a lot of what we'll cover in the Saturday class. But there are patterns that we look for. Some of the Voodoo lines certainly are stronger. The red Voodoo line is the strongest. The green one is the second strongest. But we will talk about kind of like, how do you get in? How do you get in without being scared that you're catching a falling knife? And really, there's a secret to this, and it's, trading is a lot of, the unknown, and a lot of times we can get caught up in the fear of the unknown. But really, with the micro Voodoo lines, you can take the fear of the unknown and shove it aside and focus on the risk of the unknown. All right. So, wow, here we go. And guess what? If it rolls back and takes out this low that's 7 points away on the S&Ps, that means it's not working. Let's get out of it. But you have an objective viewpoint there. So a lot of times what I found when people are really fearful of the markets, they wait for everything to look perfect before they get in. Well, that's usually the top, okay? Or they'll wait for everything to get perfect to short, and that's usually the market's about to turn. And what's great about the micro Voodoo lines is it maps all this out for you, and it just makes it a lot easier. Because without that, what happens if we're not conscious of that? Our all that, I call it the survival skills we learned in childhood, all ego-based stuff, that takes over. And when that takes over, shit goes sideways really fast. It never helps. And so the reason we do all this, and we have the rotations and the levels, is to keep our ego out of the way and just focus on executing the plan, clean and simple. And that's the whole goal of this. Yeah, it is a great companion to the don't be a dumbass indicator on quick hits. Absolutely. Is a copy of Mastering the Trade still available on the Elite package? So I believe that I think we had 30 copies or whatever it was. It was just for that first webinar, I believe. That being said, you can get it on Amazon in the Kindle, and I think it's very reasonably priced. It's we had limited copies, but you can definitely get it on Amazon. Yeah, absolutely, Brian. Brian's just saying thank you to the whole Simpler team for all the support. How will we be notified of the unlimited updates? Good question. Typically, that's via email. We will double check that and then also, of course, confirm it during the class. All right, guys, I am going to sign off. I'm going to leave this page up here. And typically what I'll do is, I'll just leave it up. I know some of you are still kind of asking questions. We'll hang around. We can leave the page up for a little bit, but we can also just redirect you to the sales page. And then we'll also be around answering questions for a little bit. We'll redirect you to the sales page. And again, if this is something that you're excited about, 'cause I'm certainly excited about it, I think it's going to be a game changer for you if you've been kind of struggling in this market. And Saturday will be a lot of fun. I mean, these classes are fun because, the gold room is great, but on the gold room too, there's a lot of things happening. It's like there's a lot of different styles, there's a lot of different people. It's kind of a community. But for a class, we are zeroed in, baby, on this strategy. Okay, let's just focus on this strategy. We don't need to bring in a lot of other ideas or anything like that. And that's really the magic of these classes, is the focus that's involved. And then the rooms are great because, yeah, guess what? We're going to do micro Voodoo line trades in the gold room. But, we're also looking at other styles. We're looking at other things as well. And it's one of many. This is the opportunity to really grab it, grab this by the horns and really learn it. And then, it'll make more sense when you're seeing us do it in the gold room. All right. Thanks again for joining us this evening. and have a fantastic evening. If you guys are in the room, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And if you're not a member of the room, you'll see that you'll get an opportunity, I think, to join the room on the thank you page. And I would certainly take advantage of that. And let me just make sure if there's anything else I need to cover, because it is a free trial and all that kind of fun stuff too. All right. And I'm just scrolling through here, making sure that I've got all the questions. If you can't attend the Saturday class, will there still be an opportunity to purchase the Voodoo lines at a discount price? Okay. So Habib, what you want to do in that situation is that you want to buy the class now, because now you'll lock in the discounted price, and then you'll also get the Voodoo lines. Does that make sense? If you wait till later, like, okay, let's say you can't attend the Saturday class, like, I can't attend it and I'm just going to buy these later. Well, it's going to cost you more and you're going to have to pay a subscription. So by doing it tonight, you're getting the lower price and you're also having the subscription waived, and you're going to get a recording of the class. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's definitely what I would do there. Is there a monthly fee besides the $4.97 or $9.97? Okay, so good news. That's really a great clarifying question, because there isn't a monthly fee. This is a one-time fee. So the $4.97 is a one-time fee for the class. Let me get the drawing tool here. So this is a one-time fee, and this is a one-time fee. So it's not a monthly fee. The monthly fee we're talking about is that after the class deadline, anybody who purchases the Voodoo lines will have a monthly fee of $47 a month just to get them updated. Okay, because it's it does take a lot of work. Does that make sense? So yeah, good clarifying question there. Yeah, there will be. So that the time and force tool that I'm using, I'll give it to you guys at the class. I mean, it's a tool that I've found that's been very simple. It's very simple. Not it's time of day, but it's just a nice visual. I mean, you can write down the time of day, but when you see it on a chart and you see it approaching there, I think it just makes it easier. So yeah, I'll give that to you guys during the class. Okay, good question. This seems like if only David can update the data, it makes it vulnerable. So we definitely will have stop gaps in place for that. David is healthy; he takes care of himself. But that's something, of course, that all of us. If we flash forward to 50 years or 80 years, right? I'm probably not going to be here anymore. Well, I want to make sure that all the stuff that I've learned has kind of been passed on, and someone can do it and stuff like that too. And certainly the same thing there.
Yeah, I've imparted the knowledge to others, and in fact, Henry and I were just talking about the update process in the background while you were answering questions, JC. So yeah, it's definitely something that we have covered. Another question that came up is, hey, how often are these things updated? And I'd love to give you a precise answer, but the real answer is as needed. So when the patterns change, when the price moves outside a range, an update is required. The last update before this was mid-March, and the one before that was about 12 days prior. It's obviously been more than 12 days since mid-March. They were running about every 2 weeks, but we've been stuck in the same range for long enough. This next one is going to be maybe a little bit longer, except for the fact that a lot of folks have asked me if we can get gold and crude oil, and probably in the next couple of days we'll have an update with those levels added. So I think John got most of the other questions that were coming in. John, I don't know if you had something else that you wanted to.
No, I'm sure I missed some, so I'm just looking through here too. Okay. Patil, let's see. I wanted to find out the pattern used in Voodoo lines is Elliott wave as well as RAF Pro Tools. Okay, so yeah, a lot of the basis of Voodoo lines and why they've been placed there is the result of historical Elliott wave patterns. And then the RAF Pro is something that is a tool that we use to actually kind of help to time reversals, right? If that makes sense. Do the squeezes work with micro Voodoo lines to determine when to enter the trade? So yes. So what I like about squeezes, and we actually had a nice one today, like 5-minute squeezes are great for these. The micro Voodoo lines provide great targets. And so that combination of, rotation, or if we're just consolidating and there's a squeeze setting up. And if you're familiar with the squeezes, the squeeze is kind of a trend continuation tool. In Elliott wave, it's really good for those third wave moves. If you're not familiar with that, that's fine. But the a squeeze, if it's you got a squeeze on the ES 12 points below a tree line, guess what? The odds are that squeeze fires long and we slam into that tree line. And so that's a great little addition as well. All right, guys and gals, good stuff. It's 8:30. We've been here for an hour and a half. I am going to sign off. Again, looking forward to hanging out with you all on Saturday, and also the live trading if you choose to do that. And then for those of you, again, if you're not a member of our Gold Room, you will see an opportunity to sign up for a free trial on the thank you page. I highly encourage you to try it. No commitment, pass the trial. And that way you get a little bit more idea and a little more experience in kind of our community, what we're looking at, and also, being able to ask questions on this too, especially after the Saturday class. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. And may the trade be with you, as Allison likes to say.